Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome to part 4 of In-Depth Looksie for Codex Skitarii, and here I'm going to be looking at tactical objectives, the army-wide special rules stuff, and their battle forge capabilities. So we're starting to look at the army list proper. So tactical objectives, typically you generate this stuff for capture control tactical objectives in the main rulebook. But for a result of 11 through 16, instead, for our Skitarii army, utilize the tactical objectives in this codex. For everything else, it's generated normally, depending upon what you roll. So, 11 is a victory for logic, which gives you 1 victory point at the end of your turn if you pass a deny the witch test during your opponent's previous turn. 12 is survival is nothing, data is all, and this is where you score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if one or more friendly units with the Skitarii faction either completely destroyed an enemy unit or were completely destroyed during your turn. The quest for knowledge is number 13, and you score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if you identified a mysterious objective during your turn. 14 is Inglorium Mechanicus, and this means you score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if at least 1 enemy vehicle was destroyed during your turn, and if at least 1 enemy super heavy vehicle was destroyed during your turn, you score D3 victory points instead. 15 is Rumors of Revelation, and when this tactical objective is generated, you roll a D6, and you score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if you control the corresponding objective marker, and if your warlord controls the corresponding objective marker, you score D3 victory points instead. So the objective markers are numbered 1 through 6. You roll D6. If you control that one, you get 1 victory point. If your warlord does, you get D3. And for 16, it's Affronts to the Machine God. You score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if at least 1 enemy vehicle was completely destroyed during your turn. If between 3 and 4 enemy vehicles were destroyed during your turn, you score D3 victory points instead. And if 5 or more enemy vehicles were destroyed during your turn, you score D3 plus 3 victory points instead. I don't know how often that's going to be happening, to be honest. Even if there's a whole bunch of vehicles on the table, I just don't know how often you're going to be able to destroy 5 or more in one turn. So, but it's a thing nevertheless. And they make a designer's note because there is a Skitarii tactical objective cards thing, just like the offer or were kind of offered for other factions as well. And if you have the deck, you can shuffle the deck and just draw the top card instead of rolling dice to generate the potential objective. So with that being said, let's look at the army-wide special rules. I'm going to start off with allies, because the units in the Skitarii Codex have the Skitarii faction, and they count as an army of the Imperium. So being that they are part of the armies of the Imperium, they ally as such, as described in the ally section of the main rulebook. So that's how they would ally if you wanted allies, or you wanted to take them as an ally. They have Dune Strider, and a unit with this special rule adds 3 inches to its maximum move distance when it moves in the movement phase, when it runs, and when it makes a charge move. So basically it just moves a bit quicker. Pretty nice. We have the big main rule for them, and that is the Doctrina Imperatives. At the start of your movement phase, you can choose up to 1 Doctrina Imperative from the list opposite. Protector Imperatives will increase the army's abilities in the shooting phase. Conqueror Imperatives will make the army more proficient in the assault phase. Unless otherwise stated, each Doctrina Imperative can only be used once during the game. So, it's very simple. The Protector Imperative will raise your ballistic skill temporarily. The Conqueror Imperative will raise your assault skill temporarily, or your weapon skill, I should say, temporarily, to use proper stat line stuff. So ballistic skill is Protector, weapon skill is Conqueror. And how it works is they're broken down to 3 power levels: Gamma, Beta, and Alpha. And if you're doing the Gamma level for either, you raise the appropriate skill by 1. So Protector would raise the skill of the ballistic skill by 1. So you get +1 to your ballistic skill until the start of your next turn. The way these work is they are in effect until the start of your next turn. So the weapon skill ones potentially have more use time, because you could be locked in assault in your turn, your opponent's turn, and you get the effect for both until the start of your next turn. So Gamma raises it by 1, no side effects. Beta will raise the appropriate skill by 2, and the other skill will be dropped by 1 until the start of your next turn. And Alpha raises the appropriate skill by 3 and drops the other skill by 2 until the start of your next turn. So if you're raising your Blizzard skill with Protector and you go all the way Alpha, your weapon skill is decreased by 2 until the start of your next turn. And the opposite is true for Conqueror. Conqueror would raise your weapon skill by 3 at the Alpha level, but decrease your Blizzard skill by 2 until the start of your next turn. It's a cool thing. I like it, and I think it's pretty interesting. It would have been kind of cool if there was a little bit more to it, but this simplistic way of doing it is very nice, and it really isn't that confusing at all. So it could have been a lot worse in terms of confusing capability for sure. So simple but effective. And next up is Warlord traits. So when generating his Warlord trait, a Skitarii Warlord can either roll a d6 on one of the Warlord trait tables in the main rulebook, or a d3 on the Warlord trait table below. And if your Warlord is a Skitarii Vanguard Alpha or a Skitarii Ranger Alpha, you can either roll a d6 on one of the Warlord traits in the main rulebook, or a d6 on the table in this codex. Interesting wording here. How if it's basically not a Ranger or a Vanguard Alpha, you only get to roll a d3 on the Warlord trait table. I feel like, not to harp on my my theory, but with my theory being that they were at once part of a bigger book potentially, I can't help but think if this was written to say if your Warlord was a Skitarii, you do the top part, and if your Warlord was a Tech Priest, you do the bottom part, you know what I mean? So I can't help but think to replace that with Skitarii Vanguard Alpha and Ranger Alpha and whatnot. So anyways, that's just me. But let's look at the Warlord traits. So on a roll of a 1, you get Reinforced Exoskeleton, which makes your Warlord have the Eternal Warrior special rule. On a roll of a 2, you have Artificer Armament. You nominate one weapon carried by your Warlord. That weapon has the Mastercrafted special rule. However, this cannot be applied to a Relics of Mars equipment. 3 is Masterwork Bionics. Your Warlord can reroll failed Feel No Pain rolls. 4 is Incense Generatorum, because we can't just say generator. Your Warlord has the Shrouded special rule. 5 is Disciple of the Omnissiah. Your Warlord and all friendly units with its Skitarii faction within 12 inches of him reroll failed morale checks, pinning, and fear tests. Pretty cool. And 6 is Emotionless Clarity. And when your Warlord and his unit fire Overwatch, their ballistic skill is counted as being 4 instead of 1. This is not affected by bonuses or penalties from the Doctrine of Imperative special rule. So, if you raise your ballistic skill that turn, it's still just 4. If you lowered your ballistic skill because you raised your weapon skill that turn, it's still 4. So, it's a trade-off. That's your Warlord traits. Pretty cool. I would have preferred Masterwork Bionics to maybe also raise your Feel No Pain save by 1, instead of just re-rolling it, which is cool, but it would also cool if it kind of made it a little bit better, because it is called Masterwork Bionics. But anyways, the last thing I want to ramble about is your Battleforged part of being the Skitarii army. Now, in my opinion, Unbound is lame. I think there's no reason to not play a Battleforged army, to be honest. I really don't. I mean, if you want the ability to not have to worry about the allies chart and go willy-nilly and do whatever you want, that's what casual gaming is for. But, for me, Battleforged personally is the only way to go. So, the Skitarii Maniple is what their Battleforged thing is called, and let's look at how it works real quick. You have a compulsory choice of 2 troops. Must have 2 troops. Remember, no HQ in this codex, so nothing to worry about there. So for optional choices, you have 6 more troop choices, 4 elites, 2 fast attack, 4 heavy support, 1 fortification. Restrictions. All units in this detachment must have the Skitarii faction or have no faction. Command benefits. Crux Mechanicus. If this detachment is your primary detachment, you can reroll the result when rolling on the Warlord trait table in Codex Skitarii. Furthermore, your Warlord has the preferred enemy special rule. Not bad. And Tireless Advance. All models from this detachment have the Crusader and Scout special rules. Units from this detachment cannot outflank due to this special rule, but can do so as a result of a different special rule, such as Infiltrate or a Mission special rule. So you get half the Scout, you get Crusader, You get Crusader and half the Scout special rule. So still the only thing that can really outflank will be, as you'll come to see, Skitarii infiltrators, but everything can benefit from the other half of the Scout rule, which is pretty cool. And it's nice. It's a nice way to help this force out a little bit, because I'll just do a little bit of spoiling here and now before going into the army list section proper. There are no transports, so this giving them that scout and stuff like that with that tireless advance rule is a little way to kind of help get over that hurdle. But I'll go over that more so in the wrap-up ramble when we eventually get there. But I like their Battle Forged. It gives the feeling of how they should kind of be represented. You know, fast attack is not their strong suit, so they don't have much of it. So I like that. That's why I prefer things like Battle Forged over just Unbound, because Battle Forged still gives you plenty of leeway. I mean, you still have all the choices available to you. It's just that the least amount of options you have is for fast attack, and you get a whole bunch of troops. So I like it because it's not forcing you to play a certain way necessarily, but it's guiding you in the fluff direction of how that force will be equipped. And that's why I like Battleforged stuff over this Unbound stuff. Anyways, that's really it. So thanks for sticking through it. And the next one will be keep on trucking on with the whole army list section of stuff. So stay tuned for that. And until next time, take it easy.